Today we're diving deep into Indian spirituality with two really influential figures, Kabir and Swami Vivekananda.
Yeah.
Now, these guys lived centuries apart,
Mm-hmm.
but their teachings on existence and truth, they still resonate so strongly today.
Absolutely. And I think it's so interesting how their different backgrounds and approaches to spirituality kind of highlight some universal truths.
Yeah, that's what we're going to get into.
Yeah.
So Kabir first,
Yeah.
he lived in the 15th century during a ton of religious conflict.
Yeah, right.
And he really challenged the dogma of his day
Yeah.
through poetry that was accessible to everyone.
It's true.
And I've always been curious about how he uses such simple imagery like weaver's threads, the flight of birds,
Mm-hmm.
to discuss these complex spiritual concepts. Was that a deliberate choice?
It absolutely was, I think, by using the language of everyday life. Kabir was able to connect with people from all walks of life, regardless of their background, their religious background, their social standing. And at the heart of his teachings was this radical concept of nirguna Brahman.
Okay.
So think of it like the air we breathe.
Okay.
You can't see it, but it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It sustains everything.
Yeah.
And that's how Kabir envisioned the divine, this formless, all-pervasive presence that goes beyond any specific religion or ritual.
So instead of focusing on outward displays of piety, Kabir was urging people to look inward
Exactly.
and connect with that divine essence within themselves.
Yeah, he was basically saying, stop searching for God in temples and scriptures. God is within you.
Wow.
And that was revolutionary, especially in a society so deeply divided along religious and social lines
Yeah.
as his was.
And his poetry wasn't afraid to challenge that status quo,
Oh, absolutely.
was it?
Kabir's poetry wasn't just beautiful, it was a powerful critique of the hypocrisy and superficiality he saw in organized religion.
Right.
For example, there's a verse where he says, the Hindu says, Ram is dear to me. The Turk says, Rahman. They quarrel among themselves, but none knows the truth. He wasn't afraid to call out the absurdity of religious conflict, especially when it blinded people to the underlying unity of all beings.
And that's so relevant even today.
Precisely.
I mean, we're still dealing with so many of these same issues
Yeah.
of division and intolerance.
Absolutely. And Kabir's message of love and unity is just as potent now as it was centuries ago.
Now, Vivekananda, on the other hand,
Yes.
seems to have taken a different approach.
Yeah.
Right? He was known for bringing Vedanta philosophy to the world stage.
He was a master orator and writer, and he saw the value in making this ancient spiritual wisdom relevant to a modern global audience.
Yeah.
And his concept of practical spirituality resonated with people because it focused on living our divinity through action, not just rituals or seclusion.
So he wasn't advocating for withdrawing from the world.
Not at all.
Okay.
Vivekananda believed that true spirituality is expressed through our engagement with the world, through our actions, and how we treat others.
Okay.
He famously said, "It is a blessing to be born a man. It is a terrible thing to die a man without realizing one's divinity," which is a powerful reminder that we are all capable of great things and that our lives have a deeper purpose.
So instead of retreating from the world, Vivekananda saw spirituality as a way to transform ourselves and society for the better.
Exactly. He was a big advocate for karma yoga, which is the path of selfless action performed without attachment to the results.
Okay.
So it's about dedicating our actions to a higher purpose,
Right.
recognizing that our actions have ripple effects that impact the world around us.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how he connected this idea of selfless action to his vision of a strong and independent India.
Right.
He believed that true spirituality wasn't just about personal liberation, it was also about uplifting society as a whole.
So he was really trying to bridge that gap between
Yeah.
inner transformation and outward action.
Exactly. He believed that spirituality should empower individuals and inspire them to work for the betterment of their communities and the world at large.
And this idea of selfless action, karma yoga,
Yeah.
seems to be a key point of connection
Yeah.
between Kabir and Vivekananda,
Yeah.
even though they approached it from different angles.
Right.
Kabir through his poetry and criticism of empty rituals,
Right.
and Vivekananda through this idea of channeling spiritual energy into practical action.
Yes. It's fascinating how their paths converge on this idea that true spirituality isn't passive. It's about recognizing our interconnectedness and working to make a positive impact on the world around us.
So for both of them, it wasn't enough to simply contemplate the divine.
Mm-hmm.
You had to live it.
Yeah.
You had to embody it in your actions.
Absolutely. And that's what makes their teachings so relevant today. We
Yeah.
live in a world that's facing so many complex challenges, from climate change to social injustice to political polarization.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed, to feel like our individual actions don't matter.
Right. But Kabir and Vivekananda seem to be saying that every act of love, every act of kindness, every effort to create positive change, no matter how small it contributes to a larger tapestry of healing and transformation.
Exactly. They remind us that we all have the power to make a difference,
Yeah.
that our lives have meaning and purpose, and that's a really empowering message.
It really is. Now, I'm curious about Kabir's poetry.
Yeah.
You mentioned how accessible it was, and I know some of his verses have become almost proverbial in India.
Mm-hmm.
What are some specific examples of his imagery that resonated with people?
Well, Kabir was a weaver by profession, so he often used the metaphor of weaving to describe the spiritual journey. He talked about the threads of our actions creating the fabric of our lives,
All right.
and how we need to carefully choose the threads we weave to create a tapestry that's beautiful and strong.
That's such a powerful image.
Yeah.
It's like he's saying that our choices have consequences and that we're constantly creating our reality through our actions.
Yes. And he also used the imagery of the body as a temple, urging people to see the divine within themselves rather than looking for it in external objects or rituals.
So it wasn't about denying the physical world, but about seeing it as a reflection of the divine.
Exactly. He believed that true spirituality wasn't about escaping from the world, but about transforming it from within.
Now, Vivekananda, on the other hand, was a master at taking these ancient Vedantic principles and presenting them in a way that resonated with a modern audience.
Yeah.
He didn't shy away from engaging with the intellectual currents of his time, did he?
Not at all. Vivekananda was brilliant at synthesizing ideas from different fields, from science to philosophy to religion, and showing how they all pointed to a deeper truth.
Wow.
He saw no conflict between reason and faith, between the material and the spiritual. He believed that true knowledge encompassed both realms.
So he wasn't afraid to challenge traditional interpretations of Vedanta and make it relevant to the challenges of his day.
Absolutely. He saw Vedanta as a dynamic philosophy that could adapt to the needs of a changing world, and he was passionate about empowering people to think for themselves, to question dogma, and to use their knowledge to create a better future.
So both Kabir and Vivekananda, in their own ways, were challenging people to look beyond the surface, to delve deeper into themselves and the world around them.
Yes, and they were both deeply concerned with social justice, with uplifting the marginalized, and creating a more equitable society.
Right.
Remember Vivekananda's famous quote, "They alone live who live for others." He believed that true spirituality was about more than just personal enlightenment. It was about using our gifts and talents to serve others and make a positive impact on the world.
And it seems like that sense of service was deeply rooted in love.
Yeah.
Love for the divine, love for humanity, love for all beings.
Absolutely. Love was the driving force behind their teachings and their actions, and it's what continues to inspire people today.
Wow. It's amazing how these two figures, separated by centuries, they both tapped into this universal truth that true spirituality lies in transcending our limited selves and connecting with something greater,
Yeah.
whether it's through devotion, action, or a combination of both.
Yeah.
The path leads us to realize our interconnectedness and find meaning beyond the material world.
And it's this very idea that continues to inspire people today.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes Kabir and Vivekananda so compelling. Their teachings speak to the deepest longings of the human heart across cultures and time,
Yeah.
They offer a timeless wisdom that can help us navigate the complexities of modern life
Right.
and create a more compassionate and just world.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Kabir and Vivekananda, what's one thing you hope our listener takes away from this exploration?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the path to spiritual fulfillment is multifaceted. It can be found through devotion, through action, through inner reflection, or a combination of all these. The key is to find what resonates with your own heart.
Right.
And to live a life that reflects those values.
Beautifully said. And whether our listener is drawn to Kabir's poetry or Vivekananda's philosophy, their teachings offer timeless wisdom that can guide us on our own spiritual journeys.
Absolutely.
They remind us that true spirituality is about transcending our limited selves, connecting with something greater, and using that connection to make a positive impact on the world. So as we leave this deep dive, I encourage you to ponder this.
Okay.
What aspect of Kabir or Vivekananda's teachings speaks to you most deeply?
Yeah.
How can you integrate their wisdom into your own life and contribute to creating a more harmonious and just world?
That's a great question.
Their legacy lives on in the hearts and actions of those who continue to seek truth, love, and unity.